Welcome to Betrayal Affairs. In today's video, we step into a story that begins with nothing more than the ordinary frustrations of everyday life, but soon spirals into a chain of temptations, unexpected emotions, and decisions that blur the lines between right and wrong. It is a journey that begins with noise, but what unfolds is far louder than any construction drill. The jackhammer was relentless. Its rhythm had carved itself into my skull since early morning, and by the time the clock crawled past 7 a.m., the pounding had fused with my heartbeat. My home office, the one space I had curated into a sanctuary of calm productivity, felt hijacked by chaos. The drilling, the shouting, the clatter of heavy beams, each sound cracked against my concentration like a whip. Another conference call, another string of apologies to clients who could barely hear me over the racket. Every sorry I muttered carried not just frustration but a growing shame, the kind that gnaws at your professional pride. Finally, I had enough. I slammed my laptop shut, the sound echoing in my quiet office and nearly drowning out the cacophony outside. I was ready to storm over, fueled by all the irritation bottled inside me. I shoved back my chair, smoothed my skirt, and marched outside, my heels sharp against the pavement. The humid Washington, D.C. air wrapped itself around me like an unwanted cloak, and within seconds, my silk blouse clung to my back. And then I saw them. 5 men, their shirts soaked through, their muscles straining as they maneuvered wooden beams and heavy tools with the kind of practice strength that looked effortless. Sunlight bounced off their damp skin, shadows defining every flex and pull. My anger wavered. My words stuck somewhere between my throat and tongue. Instead of shouting, I found myself staring. The foreman looked up first. His eyes met mine across the scaffolding, and for a fraction of a second, I felt something strange flicker in my chest. His voice carried easily despite the background noise, low and gravelly. "Can I help you?" I opened my mouth, but the sharp retort I had prepared melted away. My voice came out softer than I intended. "The noise, it's been distracting." He wiped his brow with the back of his hand, and the gesture seemed almost deliberate, as if he knew the effect it had. His biceps flexed with the motion. "Sorry about that. We're on a tight deadline, but I'll do my best to keep it down." This should have been the end of it. A neighborly complaint, a polite apology, and then back to my day. But instead, words tumbled out before I could stop them. "You all look like you could use a break. Maybe some lemonade?" For a moment, silence fell over the group, and then the foreman's mouth curved into a slow, knowing smile. "That's mighty kind of you." And just like that, 20 minutes later, 5 men filled my kitchen. The space that usually felt open now seemed smaller, charged with something I couldn't name. They leaned against counters and stood near the island while I poured glasses of cold lemonade, weaving between them like a hostess at some unplanned gathering. Every time a hand brushed mine as I passed a glass, every subtle shift of their bodies closer to mine, I felt a spark of awareness ripple through me. It wasn't overt. Nothing inappropriate. But it was there. A current humming just beneath the surface. "Nice place," one of them murmured. His voice was low, his dark eyes following me with intensity. "Thanks," I replied, leaning back against the counter. My skirt tugged slightly upward, and I was suddenly aware of the way it framed my legs. I work from home, which is why the noise has been difficult. The foreman stepped closer, and the scent of sawdust, sweat, and something inherently masculine filled the space between us. "Maybe we can make it up to you," he said, almost casually, though his eyes never left mine. A chill that wasn't cold slid down my spine. The air shifted. It was no longer just about construction noise. I should have told them to leave. I should have gone back to my calls. But instead, I found myself whispering, "Stay." That one word changed everything. From that day forward, noon no longer meant lunch or conference calls. It meant footsteps at my door. It meant the shift of atmosphere in my house. It meant stolen moments that balanced precariously between innocence and something far more dangerous. The first afternoon, they stayed long after their break ended. We really talked. I learned about the foreman, a man who carried responsibility on his shoulders like it was natural, who commanded attention not by force but by presence. I learned about the younger one with restless energy and eyes that seemed to burn with unspoken words. I learned about the quiet one who noticed details others overlooked. Each of them brought a different energy into my home, and together they filled it with something I hadn't realized I was starving for: attention. It wasn't physical at first. It didn't have to be. It was in the way they listened to me, the way their laughter filled spaces in my home that had been empty for too long. It was the thrill of being seen, really seen, after years of blending into the monotony of work and responsibility. And yet, I couldn't deny the undercurrent. The brush of fingers lingering a second too long. The warmth of a shoulder brushing mine. The way silence sometimes fell, heavy and charged, when eyes locked just a beat too long. By the second day, my anticipation was unbearable. I found myself taking extra care in the morning, choosing a sundress that hugged my shape just enough, telling myself it was simply for comfort in the summer heat. But deep down, I knew. I was dressing for the moment when I'd step outside with a pitcher of lemonade and see their heads turn in unison, their eyes lighting with something unspoken. Each afternoon unfolded differently. Sometimes they lounged in my living room, boots kicked off, talking about their lives while sipping from glasses I kept refilling just to have an excuse to move among them. Sometimes they teased me playfully about being too serious, urging me to relax, to laugh, to let go. Other times, the foreman's eyes would linger on mine with an intensity that made me forget the noise outside, forget the laptop waiting on my desk. It was dangerous, and I knew it. Every instinct told me I was inching toward a line that couldn't be uncrossed. But instead of stepping back, I found myself leaning into it, curious to see how far I could go before something snapped. By midweek, my work had all but disappeared. Conference calls went unanswered. Emails piled up. Deadlines blurred into irrelevance. My mornings became rituals of preparation, long baths, careful grooming, selecting clothes with hidden intentions. I told myself it was still harmless, that I was simply enjoying the company. But the truth was undeniable. I craved those afternoons, the thrill of their arrival, the way their presence made me feel alive again. One afternoon, as golden sunlight spilled through the windows, I found myself sitting on the kitchen island while the younger one stood close, telling me a story about his childhood. His laughter was contagious, and when I laughed too, he leaned just a little closer, his knee brushing mine. The foreman watched from across the room, his expression unreadable. For a moment, I thought he might say something, but instead, he just gave me a look that made my pulse quicken, a look that told me he saw everything, that he understood far more than he let on. It was never just about attraction. It was about power, attention, the dangerous allure of stepping outside the neatly drawn lines of my life. By Friday, the air in my house was thick with unspoken promises. They no longer asked if they could come in during their breaks, it was simply understood. Noon arrived, and so did they, filling my space with noise, laughter, and an energy I couldn't resist. I caught myself wondering what the neighbors thought, seeing a steady stream of men entering my home day after day. The thought should have embarrassed me. Instead, it thrilled me. And then, just like that, the week ended. The job was done. The scaffolding came down. The hammering ceased. My sanctuary was quiet again. Too quiet. That weekend, I wandered through my home like a ghost. The kitchen island, the living room couch, even the hallways, they all carried echoes of laughter, of conversations, of the weight of something I couldn't put into words. My bed felt too big, the silence too sharp. I tried to dive back into work, but the words on my screen blurred. I found myself glancing at the clock at noon, my body expecting the knock at the door, the shift in atmosphere. But there was nothing. Only silence. By Monday, the absence was unbearable. I opened my laptop, but before I could type a single email, the doorbell rang. My heart stopped. When I opened the door, the foreman stood there. Alone this time. His eyes held the same intensity as before, but now it was focused entirely on me. "The job's done," he said quietly, almost apologetically. "But if you ever need anything, maintenance, or otherwise, you know who to call." His words were simple, but the weight behind them was undeniable. I stood there in the doorway, torn between the part of me that longed for the return of that chaotic, intoxicating week, and the part that knew it couldn't last. That it wasn't sustainable. That it wasn't safe. I smiled anyway. I'll keep that in mind. He nodded once, and then turned to leave. I watched him walk away, the echo of his footsteps fading into the summer air, leaving me with a silence heavier than the noise had ever been. And here's the question I leave with you: is this the kind of temptation we secretly crave, a disruption so intoxicating that it makes us forget our routines, our rules, even our loyalties? Or is it the kind of danger we should resist at all costs, no matter how thrilling it feels in the moment? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done in my place? Would you have invited them in, or kept things strictly professional? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more. Turn on notifications so you never miss what comes next. Thank you for watching Betrayal Affairs, and I'll see you in the next one.